Do you have enough volunteers in your church to run children's and youth work? It's one of the biggest challenges churches reported to Roots in our annual subscriber survey. Perhaps you've had key volunteers step down. Perhaps you've had to stop running groups because of a lack of children or volunteers. And then it can feel like a negative cycle. Without the children, we don't run the groups. Without the groups, children and young people don't come to church. If we want to run a group, do we have enough volunteers to cover the required ratios? What can we do? I'm Melanie Cave, Managing Director at Roots, and today I'm talking to Tom Clark, the Churches and Networks Consultant at the Church of England. He leads the work stream aiming to help churches recruit 27,000 volunteers with children and young people by the year 2030. We talk about sharing vision and the practical details of leading and recruiting teams. And there's lots in this conversation about what's encouraging us. These goals of recruiting more volunteers may sound audacious, but God is on the move and he's up to something new. I think this conversation with Tom will leave you equipped and encouraged to add new volunteers to your church teams. Thanks for joining us on the Roots for Churches podcast. Here we go. Welcome, Tom, to the Roots for Churches podcast. It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
What a treat. Thanks, Melanie. Thrilled to be with you.
And you're somewhere exciting today.
I am. We just moved into our new office here. I'm at Lambeth Palace, which is the home and office of the Archbishop of Canterbury. The sun is shining. I think I can hear the gardener outside mowing the lawn. It feels great, a great privilege to be in such a historic building as this and still a serving, worshipping, praying community at Lambeth. So it's
great.
Very exciting to be here.
Hopefully people can feel the spirit coming through the airwaves, as it were.
Hopefully.
And you've got a fantastic role for the Church of England because the Church of England has some big, audacious goals about becoming younger as a church. So can you tell us a bit more about what this vision and mission is all about?
Yeah, there's this really exciting vision, and one of its key strategic priorities is to double the numbers of young active disciples in the Church of England, so to grow younger and more diverse. And it's really exciting to play my part in that. I'm on a secondment here at the National Church Institute for 7 months, and I suppose helping out in whatever ways I can to see that become reality. Praying, working hard, serving, pulling some levers where we can pull them, funding various different projects. Yeah, it's really exciting. And it's a real privilege and treat actually to be involved after 17 odd years of youth work, and to kind of lend my hand in it is a real honour. Yeah, love it.
Amazing. And then you're now a curate as well, training?
Yeah, that's right. I got ordained, almost 3 years ago at St Paul's Cathedral in London, which for a kid from Wigan with mild dyslexia and recently diagnosed with ADHD, that's not where I would be expecting to see my life unfold. But it's been an amazing journey with bumps along the way, but a real privilege and a blessing. And honestly, I pinch myself to think that the Lord might use me and work through me to help with this vision with children and young people. So it's I'm a curate. I'm officially ordained. In fact, if you're watching the video, I'm here dressed as a vicar, in my dog clergy shirt, my dog collar. So it's
It's fabulous. I just think it's such a gift that we've got more and more people who are coming into senior leadership in the church who have a background in children's and youth work. Because I think you need people making the decisions who have children and youth at their heart and as a priority. And so I think that experience, 17 years as a youth worker, it's not that you're working up through the ranks. It's not that you graduate from being a youth worker, because you never do. If you're a youth worker, you love young people and you never outgrow that. But it's that you've actually got even more, as you say, levers to pull. You've got even more influence to shape the church, to welcome those who are young. So I think this is a fabulous move.
Well, thanks. I'm still a youth worker. Will always be a youth worker for as long as God wants me to be, and it's a real treat to be able to do that. Ordained as a minister in the Church of England. Yeah, forever. As long as I can get away with being a youth worker, I will be. I think until I retire or get an injury that stops me doing it.
Oh, I don't know. I think as long as you can talk and as long as you enjoy young people, you're never too old to be a youth worker. I think, I know a lot of youth workers who are retirement age, actually, and they are some of the favourites because young people love chatting to people of different generations. So, it's not always the cool kids that get to be youth workers.
No, I don't count myself as a cool kid. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we had this guy, Keith, at the church I worked at, a local parish opposite an estate in York, of an age you're describing, retirement age, and they loved him. You know, like you say, they need granny and granddads and uncles and aunties, and Keith was certainly that. He was a great volunteer, really committed, super loyal. Young people love chatting with him.
It's so good. So this big goal to double the number of children and young people, that's audacious. But there's a breakdown of how you want to go about this. And part of that is about training and releasing new paid children's and youth workers, but also 27,000 volunteers released to work with children and youth by 2030. So that is less than 5 years from now. And you, Tom, are responsible for recruiting 27,000 volunteers. Now, I think we have it hard in our churches trying to find a few volunteers. You've got to find 27,000, Tom. What are you going to do?
Well, thankfully, it's not only down to me, Melanie. I mean, there's lots of amazing parishes doing amazing work, and the Spirit is moving. The Spirit will move wherever she moves. And I think that's right. I mean, it's massive, isn't it? 27,000 volunteers is utterly ridiculous. And I think I don't know whether like it's an appraisal or probation or whatever it is, but I think I need 5,000 extra by the end of this year. And there's lots of different ways of doing it. I mean, there's already work that's begun, and we now know how many across the country serving already. But you're right. If we're going to double the numbers of young active disciples across the church, then we need people who are going to help raise up a generation of young people to help them stick as followers of Christ for the rest of their lives. And if you're going to be an apprentice of Christ, I like to think of it as apprenticeship. If you're going to be an apprentice of Christ throughout your life, you need tools in your toolkit that will help you do that. And these volunteers, these people, these 27,000 extra are simply coming alongside young people to help show their faith, share their faith, and explain some of the tools that they've used and see if that's of any help to young people that they're with and children they're serving. And of course, you know, it could be anything from making the hot chocolate or putting out the chairs or getting the tuck shop ready. It can be leading Bible study groups or messy church mornings or afternoons or toddler groups. I mean, the numbers of ways that the church serves children and young people across the country is, you know, it's amazing. And so I suppose we're trying to add some more to make even more possible and help young people be formed in the likeness of Christ. So yeah, it's a bit silly really, isn't it? 27,000. So yeah, so it's split up, as you say. So there's 30,000 project is the overarching project. 3,000 of those 30,000 are to be paid, trained, and employed, and 27,000 are to be new volunteers. We're making some headway on it, but yeah, we've got some way to go. But I reckon we can do it. What do you think?
Well, I think if you don't aim high, you're not going to get anything. You
Yeah,
know, it'd be better to aim big. And
What's that phrase?
if you
Aim
get
for the moon, you might hit the stars. We'll see where we go with it.
Exactly. I also just think it reminds me of the story of Gideon that, like, you know, God can do a lot with a little, and sometimes he needs big numbers and sometimes he doesn't. But I also think there's something about trusting God with this. And if God has given a vision and said, we need 27,000 for this, then God's going to somehow bring those people out of the woodwork. And we have to trust that God's in on this. I know not everybody listening is going to be Church of England. We have people listening from around the world. But I think this is part of the reason I wanted to talk to you about this is because this is a universal issue. Finding volunteers, recruiting team is hard. It's one of the hardest things that church leaders, children's workers, youth workers do. And I think there's also, let's set the landscape. Like during COVID, lots of our tried and trusted volunteers got to the end of themselves and said, I've run my race, I'm going to step down. And so a lot of churches felt like they lost these stalwarts of the faith, these people who were like the backbone of their Sunday school, who ran things forever. And so they have potentially found some new people, but maybe they haven't got the 20, 30 years of experience. Some of the churches haven't found people. That there was something that happened during COVID. It changed the demographic of their church. And so they feel like, well, we don't even have children anymore. How can I recruit children's and youth workers? Should I be doing this? Is it a step of faith? How do I recruit a children's youth worker when there's no children in our children or families in our church? So it feels like we're running from a standing start in some churches, or even people are a bit discouraged and frustrated and thinking this is all on me. I have a very small team, or it's just me doing this. How do we go about recruiting, and how do we encourage ourselves looking for volunteers?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? When you're in that place of frustration or you're discouraged, and like you say, it might seem like there's no hope, or you've had some amazing volunteers that have left and you're thinking, where on earth will I get some new ones from? I always come back to that verse when Jesus says, let the little children come to me. So we know it's a desire of God. It's in Jesus' very words in the Gospels, and he wants the children to come to himself. And um, there might be different ways that we can go about that. And whether that's, like when he says to some of the disciples, try casting your nets on the other side, and then they cast their nets on the other side and they bring in so many fish. I mean, too many fish that they can
It nearly
handle.
sinks the boat, doesn't it?
That's it. The boat is going to sink. And I'm an optimist. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. So I think realizing that there's many more steps involved than this. But for some people, it's a case of just thinking, we've just got to throw our nets on the other side. We've got to do something different, something we've not tried before. And for others, it's being reminded that it's the call of Jesus on our Christian communities. And that's all across the world in all kinds of different churches. And the work that's going on is just remarkable in those churches amongst children and young people. And more often than not, I think there's always someone who has a deep desire for the nurturing and formation of children and young people. Now, the risk is we put it all on that person, don't we?
Yeah.
I like to call them SPOCs, which stands for single point of contact. And the risk of the single point of contact is everything weighs on their shoulders.
Yeah.
They're the only person that knows where everything is when they need to set up the children or youth group. They're the person when there's a problem, we give them a call straight away. I think it needs to be more like a team effort. Of course it does. A collaboration. But all collaboration requires a captain. And so who's that person in the church who just either it's really obvious to you that God is setting them apart for this task, this mission, this ministry, or who is coming out of the woodwork, who's wanting to play their part? I heard of a local parish priest new into a role in the last few weeks, actually, and someone came up to me and said, I really just feel like I'm meant to help in some way with the children's and youth ministry. And he was just bowled over. He's like, this is amazing. This is exactly what we need. He was down to do the rota the following week. And he said, why don't you come and, join and see what's possible? And someone might just be hiding, I suppose, or not able to feel like they can say they're interested.
Yeah.
And that might be down to how it's communicated in the church. Naturally, I suppose I'm going to love churches where children and young people are spoken of. And if they're in the room, they're allowed to speak themselves. And that makes a massive difference. I think church it's a dinner party, and it's the best dinner party on the planet. And sometimes at dinner parties, or when you're having a meal at someone's house, the children can be left to the side or on their own special table in another room, in the games room. I'm not deeping too deeply into the practice of youth and children's ministry on that thought. But what I am saying is, let's invite children and young people around the table and ask them, what might you like to have? What does it look like for you? And I think if they're around the table, someone in that room will think, I'm meant to be helping these guys. There's something that I can do with this. So yeah, it's discouraging. It can seem hopeless, but it's the call of God on our lives. Jesus himself says, let little children come to me. So we must do something about it. We must help and serve God in this way.
And I think that picture you had of throw the nets on the other side, if you're in a church where there aren't any children or families, it can feel like, let's get back to the good old days when we had a big Sunday school or junior church, and you're looking for somebody to replace Ethel, who led the Sunday school for 50 years. And I wonder if throwing the net on the other side means that you're not trying to recreate what you had before, but you're thinking more creatively. Is it we go into schools? Is it we're running a community project? Are we running a football club? And when you start thinking a bit more outside the box of what children's and youth ministry looks like, then you get different people coming forward, people who are passionate about football or passionate about schools and who would never have seen themselves as a Sunday school teacher or a toddler group leader, but they really care about, young people rather than children or something like that. And so again, I think sometimes as you say, throw the net on the other side, allow God to do the new thing that God is doing, and you get different people. But I'd often think we can be quite blinkered in church, that we think this is what children's and youth ministry looked like when I was a child, or in the best church that I was in, they did it like this. And that's what I'm trying to recreate. And God is often trying to do something new or different or fresh in a different community where there's different needs. And so I think sometimes we cannot see the volunteers that would pop up and serve in those ways, because we are looking for a particular type of person or a particular skill set or even a particular kind of group or gathering that we want to do for children and young people. And you might have people who want to mentor or do something intergenerational or have intergenerational small groups. And that looks really different to your typical children's and youth worker, but it can still be really incredible and powerful. So again, it's that allowing God to do the new thing and speak to us. I think that, yeah, sometimes when we're looking for volunteers, we're just looking at the wrong people. We're looking at the same people who do everything else in church and asking them to do more. It happens,
there
doesn't
certainly
it?
is that risk, isn't there? You ask the what is it? You ask 20% to do 80% of the work, I think, is the what I've heard mentioned. I was just thinking then, I think you're totally right about Ethel, lovely Ethel, who presumably ran the most amazing children's group.
She did. She probably raised all of us in the faith.
Well, quite. And I was thinking about Ethel's prayers. We gather as the Church of England every Tuesday at 1:00 to pray for the double numbers of young active disciples. And of course, there are prayer meetings like that across all the different church, across all the world. But just, I was thinking about Ethel's prayer, and I hope this is okay by Ethel. I was imagining what her prayers might have been. And I don't know that Ethel was sat there praying for it to be on a certain night and for it to look a certain way. I think Ethel was probably praying, Lord, would you send some children to this group? Lord, would you open something up that young people might come to know you? And I suppose if that's then our prayer, that's got to be our prayer. And so if our prayer is more like that, let the little children come to you, Lord, amen, then my faith is one that says God will sort out all the bits along the way. And of course, it's been said that prayer is a two-winged bird. One is prayer and the other is doing something about it. Of course, there's got to be some action on the other wing. But I think if we think to her prayers, then I think we've got to pray, Lord, what is it you're doing in this community? What could we do to help you? And then, like I say, maybe I'm over-optimistic about these things. I think he'll send the workers. The harvest is plentiful, the workers are few, therefore pray for the workers. And surely he sends them.
He does.
What prayer? There could be few greater prayers than the prayer of someone saying, could you give us opportunity to share our faith with these children and young people? I think the Lord
God
wants to answer those
that
kind
one
of
more than
prayers.
anything.
I think that's right. So, yeah, I thought of my own Granny Wigan, Brenda McMaster, when you mentioned Ethel, and I thought, what are the kind of prayers she'd have prayed for those groups? And they saw amazing things happen. And it might be that, the same things need to happen again, the same kind of groups on the same kind of day in the same kind of way. Or, like you say, it might be that it's something fresh and different, or a renewed vision for it.
There are our church children who have grown up in church or who are part of church families, and they need discipling. But there are other children who are outside of church. Their families don't belong or come along to church very regularly, and they still want to come to faith. And I am so encouraged by the Quiet Revival report from the Bible Society, because I see evidence of that in my own children's lives. I've got teenagers, and my son, he told me, like, the other day he was walking, they go and tutor, he's in sixth form and they tutor in a primary school, and they were walking together, and the friend turned to him and said, I really admire your faith. Will you tell me how to become a Christian? My son, nearly fell over. And he was just like, was not expecting that. But here is a kid who is in his sixth form college, who is interested in faith and is proactively asking someone, how do I become a Christian? My daughter tells me stories of like friends saying, hey, do you go to church? I'd like to come with you. And these are kids who have no background in it. And my kids are great. I mean, they probably are quite evangelistic or sharing of their faith, but they're not like out and out, like shouting about it. These are impetuses on these other children walking up to my kids and saying, hey, I want to know more. So God is doing something. And he is stirring the hearts of children and young people across the UK and, 20-somethings, as the Quiet Revival is telling us, people that we wouldn't expect are interested in faith. And it's like, we just almost need to be opening the doors, opening our hearts, looking outward, and we'll catch some of these people because they're coming to us. So it's a fun ask, I think. It's not like come and do drudgery for Jesus. It's like God's up to something.
Yeah.
Do you want to be part of it? And I think that's part of this recruitment question. How do we recruit volunteers? It's almost like, what do we think we're asking them to join in? Are they joining in something where they're on a rota and they're filling in numbers and they're doing something that's a little bit boring? I don't know. But are we inviting them to be part of a team where they've got some connections and friendships, where they're part of something really special? And I know I was on Sunday school. It's not called that, but the kids groups on Sunday. And like, There's some elements of it that are really hard, but there's some elements of it that are just beautiful that I would never get in the big Sunday service, because you get to have these amazing conversations with young people. And I wouldn't trade it. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a gift to be part of their lives. So yeah, can you help us in terms of framing, like, how do we recruit? How do we pitch what we're offering people to be involved in so that they want to be part of it?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I'm not sure I've got a silver bullet response. I think part of this is 1,000 different micro decisions that are made over a long period of time. But some of the things, as I look back over the years, involved in various different children youth work jobs and ministry and mission amongst children and young people, are these two things. One is vision, and one is like the T's and C's, the commitment that people need to give. Because I think sometimes we can step too fiercely on one side or the other. If it was scales, I think they're probably equally balanced at points in an ideal world. So one side is vision, where there isn't any vision, the people perish. Like, we need vision for this stuff. People need to be envisioned to serve amongst children and young people in the local Christian churches where they find themselves. Why are you going to reach? Who are you going to reach? What does it say in the Bible about that? And why you need those people to play their part in doing it. Why we're called to serve in the way that we're called to serve. On one side of the scales. On the other side, like, what's this mean? How many weeks are you asking for a year? How often am I going to have to go and be trained on this? What are the forms I need to fill in? What are you expecting from me? The reason to answer those questions is, I think, often if someone's convinced over one thing, then they need the other to stick around. So it's like, if there's loads of vision, then they'll be around for a while because they're just so buzzed and hyped about the idea, but they didn't realize how much they had to be, how many days a week they had to be involved in this thing. On the other side, sure, you can get someone to sign up on a rota, but they probably just are a rota filler then, and they're coming because they kind of have to, because there's not enough people to do it. But there's no like desire or passion or compassion in their spirit to want to do it. So I think if you can get those two things of vision and kind of the T's and C's and the commitment levels sorted, then I think then sometimes the recruitment is a bit easier. And I think you can lead with both of those. Some people need to know how often they need to serve before they're willing to discuss the vision. Other people, you can win them over with a quick conversation about why we need to do this. Like, yes, I'm all for it. And then they're like, oh, how often do I need to serve? So I think probably those two things I would say are super important. And then when you've got this team, it's all well and good recruiting people, but like, retention's super important, isn't it? Or else you've got to just keep getting more and more
It's
and more.
endless, yeah. And
then I've got to find
recruiting
another
is hard.
27,000 by the next year. Yeah, quite. Recruiting's hard. So then we need those people to recruit others, which is great. Word of mouth. Let's use those people to find some other people to do it. And then I've got these 3 pillars that we started to discuss as a youth team, which are, I think, 3 pillars of really healthy teams, like youth and children's teams. They're clear communication, strong support, and honourable hours. Clear communication. People need to know what they need to know, and they want to know it as soon as you've got the information. Like, I'm on this team at the moment with the kids team at church in Clapham Junction. We get this great email every week from the kids leader there who says what's coming up next week, what we could be praying for, and the sheet for they're going to be doing the worksheet in the Sunday school lesson. And then there's strong support, like, get me on a WhatsApp group or give me a message every now and again when it's my birthday or when you've thought of something I mentioned that you've been praying for, or just show that you care that I'm on your team. And it's not some kind of transactional relationship that I'm just useful to you because I'm doing a job for you on a Sunday. Actually, there's a bigger, wider pastoral investment.
Yeah.
And then
how you do your rotas can be part of that as well.
That's right.
So that it's not just relationship with the sort of overall coordinator of children's work. If you actually build relationship with the people that you work with every Sunday, because sometimes the rotas can be so random, you're like, I don't know who I'm with. Whereas if you get a feeling of like, oh, this team, I know these other adults that are working alongside me and we're on the same page, that really, really helps. So sometimes it's literally a scheduling thing that creates that sense of team. Yeah, just really little details, as we say, together. It makes a difference. Yeah.
Have some fun together. Have a summer party or a barbecue and get together at Christmas and celebrate one another and celebrate what God's been doing with the children and young people. And the third and final one is honourable hours. And that's about when they're coming to serve, making sure people know what they're doing when they're there, and give them something to do. I think I've been to groups when it's all been set up when I arrive, and I think, oh, I didn't need to come this early. And I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm so ashamed to say it. But I'm like, why am I here? There's nothing to do. But like, even as small as I go along on a Sunday morning to help with the 2s and 3s, and they ask me to chop the grapes up, I'm helping with this group. I'm helping feed the young people, hopefully both
Preventing
spiritually
choking.
and physically. Yeah, quite. And helping them not choke. And so I think making sure there's a way for people to serve and showing the gaps, because if there aren't any gaps, then people probably think they're not needed. Sometimes leaving a gap feels a bit awkward and counterintuitive, but then I think that allows people to think, oh, I could help fill that space. It's intentional. It's slightly intentional, I think, sometimes to leave some of those spaces for people to serve.
That's really helpful. I do think there's also that thing of sometimes our communication can be a bit tasky of like, here's what you're doing next week, but we also need to create that space for feedback. So even if it's 5 minutes at the beginning and at the end where you say, this is what we're going for, you're doing this bit, you're doing that bit, but at the end, regrouping and going, that went really well. You nailed that. This kid's been finding it really challenging. And this week they really engaged. We're doing something right. Or this is an answer to prayer. Just that it doesn't take long. It's literally 2 or 3 minutes at the end, but it reaffirms we're going for this vision together and everybody's contribution mattered. And I think sometimes we can just get stuck into, oh, go and collect your own kids, tidy up the room, see you later. And you don't get that little moment of touching base and being team. You've done it all together, but you haven't been able to verbalize that. And I think that little moment, again, makes people feel really validated. And they go home going, yeah, my contribution made a difference.
Yeah, that's so right. And I think it creates that super team dynamic you're looking for, and it'd be like someone coming around to your house for dinner and then they just disappear. Kind of weird, wouldn't it? You're
Yeah.
like, where did so and so go? So I think not saying bye or checking in, partly around safeguarding, is super important as well. Like, is there anything we need to know from today's session?
Yeah.
What's happened, and how can we feed into that? And is there anything I need to report? We used to do in the past. I've done like what went well and even better if round the room. Someone would say what was really good, what we could do better for 5-10 minutes, like you say, and that's part of the honourable hours thing as well. You're respecting people's time by saying we'll always start with a briefing 10 minutes before, we'll pray together, and then we'll always wrap up with some kind of debrief or quick catch up before you leave. And sure, there are sometimes people need to rush off for something. Fair enough. But those once a week or however often you're serving catch-ups, to do that then is great, because then when you get together the next time for your kind of termly hangout or your annual summer thank you bash in your garden or wherever you have it, then you're not doing all those mini catch-ups you've not done. They can then be really, celebratory thank you moments and recognize the amazing work of people.
Yeah. And that's where all the team bit happens. I do think people come to church not just to consume. There can be this tendency that people are coming and, they sit in the pew and the worship happens and the sermon happens and they have their cup of coffee and they leave. But I think a lot of people are unsatisfied with that. A lot of people want to contribute, want to have the conversations, they might be a little bit intimidated. Do I have the skills? Do I have the Bible knowledge to do this? But actually they want to make a difference and they want to contribute. They want to know that it matters that they're there, that somebody's noticed. And I think serving on a team, and particularly with children and young people, it's so rewarding. But again, there can be this sort of, do I qualify? Am I good enough? And so what are we doing in terms of like training? If we've got all these new volunteers, how do we train them? They'll all be at different sort of stages of maturity, discipleship, formation. Some of them may not even have accepted Jesus, may not be Christians yet, but they're interested in being around Christians. So how do we take all these new volunteers on a training and discipleship journey?
Oh, good question. I mean, of course, at the Church of England, we've got these 27,000 we're trying to recruit, and 3,000 we're going to train and employ and have ready to serve in various different churches across the country. So as you can imagine, there is thankfully not my role. This requires some kind of professor status to help work all this out. But they've got a training and a ministerial formation framework. And I mean, I think if you Google the 30,000 Project Church of England, you can find all the different resources and training packages and courses you can sign up to, whether that be like online how to youth and children's videos through YouTube. They're like 5-minute long, how to do a game and how to lead a Bible study and how to communicate well to young people. Or whether that's like a course like we run through some of the theological education institutes. There's a course called Catalyst that's being run across different dioceses, or the guys at Youthscape have this program called Launchpad where they're starting new children and youth groups in churches where they have been on. Or you could do like a diploma in children and youth ministry. So there's lots of different ways you can get involved. Or I think at its very basic, although this might not sound basic if you're listening and are in charge of this kind of work. So thank you for all you're doing already. But it might be just coming up with a schedule of what you think people might need to know, or asking some of your team, what is it you feel like you could be upskilled in or you'd like more knowledge of?
Yeah.
And then searching around for training days in your local area, diocese, your church's kind of gatherings of whatever church you're part of, they'll, gather and train people up. Or you might just run something once every few months around a certain topic and chew it over together and invest in people's leadership potential. And I think it's quite interesting. I was just thinking about what you're saying about team and having people serve, and like this desire to want to serve together. We saw it with our sixth formers, so like our 16, 17, 18-year-olds. We would say that they would either lead or leave. And we didn't want them to leave church. We wanted them helping us lead the church. So what we did was we got as many as we could to sign up to help on a rota with the children youth work. And we call them Young Guns. They got a little lanyard that said Young Guns on it, and they'd come to my house for a Christmas dinner and again in the summer. It sounds a lot. I do these Christmas parties and summer barbecues, but we used to get them together and they would help serve the church and the children and young people. And there might be someone listening thinking, how do we get our kind of older young people excited? And this was amazing for them. Like, they love serving, love hanging out. It started out as like a rota, but because they're the involve me, invite me, include me generation, being part of serving their kind of friends, their siblings, friends, it became a discipleship journey and actually ended up being like mentoring groups and reading the Bible together with these young people. So I think doing it with the sixth formers is important as well. And that, in a way, was its own training. We get together and read the Bible with them once every 2 or 3 weeks in a coffee shop. We would call them pockets of disciples, and we get together, read the Bible, and that was training, in formation for these young people. So yeah, I think however you can do it, there are lots of different ways that we've got available. If you Google it or have a look on YouTube, or wherever you get your content from, and yeah, training is important. Of course it is, and recruiting people safely and well is of the utmost importance.
That's really helpful. And I think you're right, that we need a spectrum of content. We need like the 5-minute videos that we can share on a WhatsApp group that say, this is 5 minutes, it's really helpful, have a watch. Or here's a podcast from Roots about, disability theology. And we probably need to think about this before we start doing this Bible passage about Jesus healing people with disabilities. Have a listen. Or here's a whole day on safeguarding that we really need you to come to because it's essential. Or here's a day of a conference about youth ministry, come along. And we offer it at all those different levels because people will opt in at different levels. And everybody's not got the same capacity because they'll be working and look after families and all sorts of stuff. But it's, so don't put all the emphasis on you running a huge training thing that they may not all be able to come to. But equally, don't just do little videos that you're sending. I think people need a bit of both, don't they?
Yeah, that's right.
But it is that equipping to go along with it. And it reinforces that vision. And as you say, the T's and C's, here's the good practice, here's what we need from you. But also, this is why we're doing it. I'm excited. I think you might get away with this 27,000.
I think we'll do it, Melanie.
I really,
really hope all of your 27,000 listeners sign up today, we'll be absolutely sorted. So please get in touch. Would you send me a message?
Message Tom and sign up.
The mobile number, but I'm very happy for my mobile number, email address we put in the show notes, or whatever you cool kids do with this information. But yeah, no, get involved in your local church.
Definitely.
And let's help raise a generation of young people who are all out for their faith. Really
God
exciting
is on the move.
Opportunity. Yeah.
That's the thing. God's on the move. You want to get involved with what he's doing because anything God's doing with children and young people is exciting. It just is. And be around it because it gives you life. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's definitely worth being involved in. So yeah. As we said, we're going to put links in the show notes to all sorts of resources that will help you with recruitment. The Church of England has created a resource called Join, which has some really lovely videos that you can even show in your church. As one of them's filmed in Loughborough, where I'm based, so that's really exciting. But again, it's just, there are resources out there. And I think maybe the overriding message is be encouraged that God is doing stuff with children and young people. It may feel like recruitment is hard, this is difficult, I can't think who to ask. But yes, pray, ask the Lord of the harvest to send workers, because the harvest, as we actually have statistics to prove, the harvest is ripe, and young people and children are turning to faith and wanting to know more about Jesus, and we need to be there to meet with them. Thank you so much for your time, Tom. I really appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing your vision and heart for this. It's been great.
Oh, well, thanks, Melanie. And thanks, everyone, for listening and watching, and prayers as you head out on this journey of serving children and young people around you in your Christian communities and churches. And may the Lord bless all you're up to.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Tom. Tom's article on finding and keeping volunteers is in Roots Children and Youth, issue 139. You can also find it online, and you can find the video links and resources that Tom mentioned in the show notes. Roots produce weekly and seasonal materials to help you lead great church. GREAT is an acronym for growing, relevant, engaging, authentic, and together. Take out a free trial online to discover how Roots can equip your church with easy-to-lead children's and youth resources, templates, worksheets, videos, songs, and articles and podcasts that will upskill your team. Alongside our weekly children's and youth sessions, preaching notes, song suggestions, prayers, and intercessions, you can find seasonal resources for worship and outreach in your community. To see all Roots has to offer, head to rootsforchurches.com to take out a free trial. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share with leaders in your church and network. And leave a review, as that helps others find it. Together, we can grow.